This is Bill Johnson, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com. Feed your head.
All right, we are back. Welcome to Without Your Head Horror Radio. I am Neil, along with...
I'm John.
And
I'm Gary Tunnicliffe.
Oh my God. We usually introduce the guest, but the guest is so excited.
I just don't care. I introduce myself. I'm not waiting for you guys.
Well,
in fact, I'm going to interview you. I'm just going to take over the whole thing, I've decided.
I know you're big fans of ours. Yeah. It's been a dream to talk to us, but we got Gary Tunnicliffe here. I gotta say, he was probably worried I was going to mispronounce the name, even though I got it right off air. So he just took the reins and introduced himself.
Sorry about that. What can I say? I make no apologies. I am who I am.
It would probably be easier if everyone did that, actually.
Yeah.
So how you doing tonight?
Very well, thank you. Very well. It's a little bit chilly in LA, which is not the norm, but it's probably freezing in New York. So.
All right. Troy and I are in Massachusetts.
Oh, there you go then.
Yeah.
And it's quite a lot of snow here.
Yeah.
Is it cold there?
Oh yeah. Cold.
Oh really?
Icy. John here, he's in West Virginia. I think he's last couple days there was a lot of power outages.
Yeah, snowed in.
See, I come from England, obviously, where it just rains all the time and it's cold all the time. And, I've been here for about 15 years and I've become a true, LA asshole where, the temperature drops by 4 degrees and it's like, okay, what's the deal? What's the deal? I have to wear a sweatshirt today? I mean, what's wrong, for God's sake? There's a 4-degree drop and everyone in LA is like, I'm not going out. I'll stay at home. It's the same as when it rains. No one drives anywhere. I can't come out today. It's raining.
Well, we gotta let everybody know. Of course they know, but My Bloody Valentine 3D is out right now, and you did the special effects for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Were you happy how it turned out?
Patrick Lussier, who the director, I've done several films with Patrick. I did Dracula 2000 and Dracula Ascension and Legacy, and also White Noise 2. Patrick's probably one of the few directors that I'd happily walk through fire for. And I probably shouldn't say that too loud because he probably asked me to do that on the next film. But Patrick's great. He knows exactly what he wants, and also he allows me to really kind of stretch myself. Originally in the script, the kills were pretty a blank canvas. I don't know if you've seen the film, but the girl who gets attacked with a shovel, she originally gets her head chopped off. And originally the guy gets the pickaxe to the eye. It isn't through the eye; it's just in the back of the head. And Patrick really allowed me to kind of come up with the deaths. And when I read the script, I was kind of worried that it was just a pickaxe, which is kind of a pretty boring weapon to kill somebody with. So I went away and wrote this thing called The Analysis of Death, and basically said, we need to come up with some cool ways of killing people. And that's when I came up with the idea for the eyeball coming out, with the shaft of the pickaxe behind it, and for hitting the girl in the mouth with the shovel, which was really a tribute to Day of the Dead. Because we were shooting in Pittsburgh in a mine, so I figured, I've got to try and hit someone in the mouth with a shovel, and I also figured it'd be really fun in 3D to have her head kind of slide down the shovel into camera.
Yeah.
So Patrick's great. So I was very happy with I think the film really worked well. I think it was kind of campy, and it knew what it wanted to be, and Patrick knew what it wanted to be, and Lionsgate were very behind what it wanted to be. So I think it was a real kind of I think a lot of the kind of remakes at the moment are very kind of grungy and dirty and a bit kind of sickly. And I felt this was really was kind of a date movie. It wasn't too grotesque for the girls to go along with with the guys, and it was kind of like, I think it owed more to Scream than, maybe Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that.
Is it different making the effects for a 3D film?
It is a little bit more different. I think you've got to pay attention to detail. The problem wasn't so much with the special effects or us, but stunts had a real problem because, when you throw a punch in a movie, you kind of shorten the punch so you don't actually hit the person in the face. Sure. Well, the problem with seeing the depth, obviously, is that you can see that distance. So the stunt people had to really be very careful, and we had to be very careful doing hits with pickaxes, which is why I ended up kind of doing all the pick hits whenever we did reverses and stuff like that, because you just read all the detail. Apart from that, the biggest problem was just waiting for the camera, because there were so many technical faults with the camera.
Right.
You know, all the time we'd be just waiting and waiting and waiting. So that was the biggest pain, really, was having to wait for the 3D technology.
Yeah. Were you a fan of the original movie?
You know, I hadn't seen it. I have to say, it was. I don't know whether in England it was one of the banned movies, so I didn't see it until like 2 weeks before we came out. And of course, I only saw the edited version. You know, the one that's not the new release now. So I'm kind of really keen. I've just done the DVD special features for that, so I'm kind of keen to see with the additional gory footage, which I hear is really good. But the original, I mean, it's got that great campy vibe to it. I mean, I think the one thing that's great about the original is obviously just that image of the guy with the mask and the pickaxe. But I have to say, I think some of the acting's a bit fun in it, you know, and a bit some of the fashions are a bit late 70s. My favorite thing in it is the guy in the bar, you know, the one who's like the barman, who's like, you know, you're all gonna die.
Yeah.
And if you watch those sequences, they're all on push-ins. Every one he does, every time it's either a push-in or a pull-back. And it's like they just shot him for half an hour and just said, okay, every line you do, we're just gonna push in. And he's like, you know, you're all gonna die. You're all gonna go to hell. Don't go in the mine, you know. So
We had the actually last year on the holiday we had the original director of the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we mentioned that was probably our favorite character in the movie too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did he like the film?
Yeah, he liked him. He was talking about that he wanted the uncut version out, and so it's pretty cool that it finally got out there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. The guys who were doing the DVD, the new release, were raving about some of the gore effects, so I was really keen to see that. Being a kind of, you know, an effects guy and a self-confessed gore hound, I was really curious to see the sprinkler death and all that kind of thing. So I will be going to my Best Buy. It would have been Circuit City, but obviously not anymore. I'll be going to my Best Buy to pick up my copy very soon.
Yeah, we actually when we had him on, we let him know about when they were making the remake, because he wasn't even aware of it at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. What was his reaction?
I don't think he was too thrilled about, that he didn't even know about it. I think was probably the worst.
No, I mean, but now I'm sure more people are going to go back and check out the original now because of the new version.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think the one thing about the new version was I think 3D really lent itself well to the project and made a lot of fun. And Patrick, was very aware of the first movie and wanted to do little homages like do the laundrette kill, the girl in the laundry dryer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we were very aware of the film, and even the look of the miner. We'd looked at various different incantations of mining masks and everything else, but I still think it feels like it's got the real feel of the first film. It doesn't go too far. It's not a reimagining.
Yeah.
So I think
get his number. I'll just call him up and we'll ask him what he thought of it.
Sorry?
I said I have his number here. We'll just call him up and ask him right here what he thought of it.
He's like, I haven't seen it. How dare you? I'm not going to go and see it.
You talked about like a lot of the remakes. Do you kind of feel like the '80s slasher film genre is kind of making a comeback?
Well, it is, isn't it? I mean, that's which is kind of cool. I mean, the great thing about horror. I mean, everyone says it, and everyone bores everyone to death with it, with the whole it's cyclical and the cycle goes around. But whether that's true or not, and I probably think it is. I mean, I'm always just glad to see any horror film, even if it's a horror film that maybe I went in and met with the producers about doing the effects on it and didn't eventually get the gig. So you always feel a little bit of animosity. But even then, I'm always happy to see any horror film do well. It always kind of sets my heart aglow when the number 2 movie in America is a horror film. So whether it be The Unborn or Uninvited or Ring 2 or 3 or Grudge or anything, I'm always just happy to see a horror film up there in the box office and people going to see it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it kind of keeps people's alive to the genre. But regarding the slasher making a comeback, I mean, has he ever really gone away?
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, whether it be in the limelight kind of number 1 box office movies or kind of the underground, Leslie Vernon, Hatchet kind of movies, or right up to the, the new Friday the 13th remake. I mean, I think he's always there. I just think it's one of those things. It's like heavy metal. People always like, heavy metal's making a comeback, and it's always like it's never gone away.
Right.
For us who like it, it's always there and has never gone away. And Judas Priest is still touring all the time, and Metallica are always touring. It's just that the rest of the public have kind of caught up with it for a little while, and they'll go their own way again for another couple of years, and then they'll come back to it and say it's a big revival. It's like it's not really changed. We're all still here,
Yeah. Now, a movie we talked a little bit before we went on air here is, I guess you've done the special effects for Pinhead many times.
I have. I've shared many an hour with Doug Bradley. Yeah, I started on. I came in just after they'd done. I actually was a fan of the first film. That's really what got me started. I was a huge Clive Barker fan, and as a young chap, I went to see Hellraiser, and sat in the cinema going, "Who the hell did that?" And that's the makeup I want to do. And a couple of years later, I found my way to the company who did it, and managed to get a job with them just after they'd finished 2. And came on board for Hellraiser 3, where I was the workshop supervisor. I didn't design anything, but I was the workshop supervisor. Bob Keane was still designing the cenobites, hence the reason that you have camera head and CD head and all that stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of. But I made all the boxes on Part 3, and then Part 4 I was the designer, and from Part 4 onwards I've been Pinhead's makeup artist, and I've designed all the new cenobites and stuff, which has been tricky. Most likely because the budgets have been so tight, especially in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Do they let you design your own cenobite, just out of your own imagination, or do you?
They do. They're really good about that. Originally in the in Part 4, Peter Atkins would literally write cenobite. He'd write something, but he wouldn't write a great deal of description about the cenobites, and then it would be up to me to go away and design things. And most people who are fans of the first, Part 4, know that when I designed Angelique, I got the idea from watching Sister Act. I walked in and my girlfriend was watching Sister Act, and I looked at the nun's cowl and thought, wow, that'd be cool if it was kind of in flesh, and that's where I got the idea for the Angelique character. Right. But I mean, I've always kind of just I love designing cenobites, and they're always kind of in the back of my mind anyway. But I mean, I either tend to design cenobites that are very kind of pretty, whilst grotesque, they're kind of pretty, right, or I tend to go for something that's kind of big and bold. But in the last few years, it's been everything from the Surgeon to Bound to Spike to Stitch to all of those characters, and the Wire Twins from Part 5 and Torso, which was really a throwback to Chatterer.
Right.
But I like doing sexy girl cenobites. It's just that they're really expensive to do, and the producers don't usually want to go down that road. But the last time we got to do sexy female cenobites was on Inferno with Scott Derrickson, who went on to direct The Day the Earth Was Still.
Okay.
And kill that one.
Since
no fear of Day the Earth Was Still fans calling you up, I think, because there's probably only 3 of them.
Oh man, sorry for you guys out there.
Well, I mean, I'm sure like everyone else, I was kind of keen to see the remake and excited, and then got out of the cinema and went, who do I see about getting my money back, Thanks again to Robert Weiss for doing a great original, Wow, yeah. How can you screw that movie up? Wow. But no, Scott Derrickson who directed Day the Earth Was Still, directed Hellraiser Inferno with the one we did with Craig Sheffer and, like I say, the Wire Twins.
Mm-hmm. Now, since he's played Pinhead so many times, what's it like putting the makeup on him?
So Bradley, he's a pain in the ass. He's a pain in the ass. He's a miserable, whining old pain in the ass. I love Doug, but people who work with us say that we're kind of like an angry married couple. You know what I mean? I mean, my job is to kind of get him in the chair and get him to sit down. I mean, the most common question I get asked is, how long does it take to do the makeup? People are always like, how long does it take to do the makeup? How long does it take to do the makeup? And the truth is, it's been done in 69 minutes. I actually officially 69'd Doug Bradley. I applied it in 69 minutes because we were crushed for time once, and I said, look, Doug, you've just got to sit down, and I'm going to go as fast as I can, and it was our world record attempt, and I did it in 69 minutes. But usually it takes 3.5 hours, because every 10 minutes, Doug's like, okay, I need a cigarette. So he goes outside, and he's smoking his cigarette, and I look at my watch, and I'm looking at my assistants going, okay, he's probably finished his cigarette now, and go outside, and of course, there's no Doug Bradley. So then you have to go and play Hunt the Doug, and he's usually managed to find the cutest of all the wardrobe girls, who is kind of, he's there with a cup of coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other, regaling her with tales of how when he was on Hellraiser 2 or Hellraiser 3 or, it's like, when I was doing blah, 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 and it's like, Doug, back in the chair, and he's like, oh, God, here he comes. It's like, Doug, I need you back in the chair. The ADs are giving it to me in the neck, and and there he is standing with half his head covered in pins and, a cup of coffee in his hand. So, usually the first day is the biggest problem when we get into set, because he just, whilst he loves Pinhead, and he would be very freaked out if anyone ever played it apart from him, It's a love and loathing thing, you know what I mean? I mean, he knows he's got to go through the process, and we try and make it as easy as possible. I mean, and we play music, and we laugh at it. We laugh like crazy. I mean, Doug's had me in tears of laughter, and vice versa. And I have to say as well, kudos to him. He really, really, really looks after the makeup. I mean, I've done prosthetic makeups on people over the years where, you know, you spend 4 hours gluing the makeup to them, and you know, they go, oh, I'm just going to get something to eat, and they come back with a piece of pizza in their hand, you know, and you know, half of it's wedged underneath the makeup, you know, and it just ruins makeups. And whereas Doug can actually eat with the makeup on and not damage it, and he's very careful, and he drinks with a straw, and he really takes care of the makeup. He doesn't stand out in the sunlight. Whereas, like I say, I've applied makeups, especially to stuntmen. They're the worst. You know, you stick a makeup on a stunt guy, and he immediately wants to run around and have his photo taken with everyone on the crew.
Right.
You know, and then he comes back and he's like, dude, I'm sweating like a pig. And it's like, well, yeah, you've spent the last 10 minutes running around, and you've drank 4 cups of coffee, and now the makeup's falling off you, you know. So they don't tend to, you know, they come back holding part of it going, I think this fell off. I'm like, what do you mean, fell off? You know, well, I banged into that wall. You know, it's like, dude.
That's not supposed to be
so Doug really takes care of it. He's great. He, you know, whilst I you know, I have to chase him down some of the time, but once he's got his business head on, he's great. And over the years, it's become more than just a kind of makeup artist and an actor kind of gig. We kind of, you know, we support each other. I make sure that he's got other things, like there's certain little regimens he has, like his cigarettes. You have to carry his cigarettes for him, and I take care of his eyes for him, and all that kind of stuff. And you know, there are certain jobs I won't do for him, obviously. You know, when he wants executive relief or something, you know, it's like, no, Doug, I draw the line. You know.
Right. Well, that's why he goes.
Can you get me that half key of Colombian white? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But generally, he's good. He's a good guy, and we've laughed and guffawed our way through many a Hellraiser movie. So, you know, he's a good man. But at times it's like, Doug, you know, or he'll be moaning about what a hard day it's been when he's worn the makeup for 3 hours, and then we're taking it off, and he's like, oh, I'm so tired, I'm so bored, and I've just spent 4 hours applying his makeup, spend the whole day with him. He's going to go home now, and I'm going to do like 14 more kills and 3 more cenobites, and I'm like, yeah, Doug, I'm not whining, mate. I've got another 12 hours to go, you know. Can it?
We get a caller here. We got Tommy on the line.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I got a couple questions for Gary.
Hey, Tommy, how you doing?
Good. My first question for Gary is, how does it feel working on the set of Sleepy Hollow, or Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow?
Yeah, Tommy, I'm going to upset you and all the other Tim Burton fans around the world. You know what? I was a huge Tim Burton fan when I went to work on Sleepy Hollow. I'd turn up every day with my Edward Scissorhands lunch pail and my Batman socks on and my Beetlejuice headband. You know, I was a big Tim Burton fan. But sometimes working on those big budget movies is a real letdown. I mean, it was one that wore me out. I was on the film for almost 9 months. And I found Tim to be, sometimes he was just a bit of an absentee, I'm afraid, whereas there were things about it that were great, like Johnny Depp was amazing, probably the nicest guy I've ever worked with, and very generous to everyone around him, including me. There's a scene at the beginning where Johnny finds a body. I don't know if you remember in the movie when he finds that body floating in the river. Mm-hmm. Well, that night we were shooting that, I was in the river with the body, and I was wearing these giant waders, and Tim Burton was like, can you get the body lower in the water? And I kept having to push it lower and lower and lower until eventually I had to kind of almost kneel down. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, in -2 degrees in the middle of winter in England, the water went over the top of the waders I was wearing. And this ice-cold water started to work its way down to past my groin and my nether regions to my feet. And Johnny saw it, and Johnny was like, oh, my God, are you all right? And as soon as we finished the scene, he was like, get this guy some blankets and some drinks and, you know, really try and take care of me. So it definitely had its highs and lows. I mean, it was a weird film to work on because they'd scheduled it for, I think, 76 days, and we shot for 112.
Ouch.
It was just never ending, and the pay was very good, and the crew jacket was really, really nice. And the food was good, and we had the most amazing sets. I mean, the set was brilliant at Leavesden. I mean, it really was a whole village. I remember my girlfriend at the time coming to visit and saying, "So what village is this?" And I went, "No, they built this." And she's like, "What, all these houses?" And I was like, "Yes, it was built from the ground up." So it was great in that way, but at times I did have run-ins with Tim Burton because he would ask for things and we'd quiz him about what he really wanted, and he didn't seem to know what he wanted. He would kind of do a lot of humming and hawing, and we'd rehearse a scene in one place, then rehearse it in another place, and rehearse it in another place, and rehearse it in another place, and then go back to the place where we first started. So at times I found that very frustrating. I think probably, Tommy, what was bad for me was I'd just come off low-budget movies tend to be very kind of like gun and run, you're working really quickly and trying to get the thing done, and you do 25 or 30 setups in a day, whereas on Sleepy Hollow we'd do like 10. So it was very weird. The whole crew on that film had just come off working on Phantom Menace, and they'd all been working on these big budgeted films where it was like, okay, we'd rehearse a set, and then it'd be like, how long to light? And the DP, who was brilliant, Emmanuel Lubetsky, would say, 2 hours to light. And then everyone would just pull out newspapers and chicken sandwiches and just kind of wait. Whereas I was used to films where it's like 10 minutes to light or 15 minutes to light or 20 minutes to light. So there's a lot of energy. So the only way I can really kind of compare it is to working in a restaurant where you're serving 5 meals a night, but they're the most fantastic meals. I'm sure the quality of the food is amazing, but if you're working in the restaurant, it's really boring. And that's what it was like for me on Sleepy Hollow. It was really kind of dull at times, a lot of waiting. And then the other problem we had, forgive me if I'm boring you to death, but was that we hired a bunch of English people to help. I was working for Kevin Yeager. Kevin Yeager was the head of the project, who incidentally, he wrote the story and was originally supposed to direct it as well. But he got paid off to actually be an executive on it and to do the decapitation effects predominantly. But we hired a bunch of English people to make these fake heads and do all the body stuff like the collapsible bodies and all the decapitations, and we hired about 25 people, and we were working in this freezing cold workshop in the middle of Leavesden. And after the first 2 weeks of working on it, Kevin turned around to me and said, "There are 2 people in this workshop who can do the work to the standard that I want to do it." He said, "And that's me and you." He said, "So buckle in for a long ride. We're going to be working here all the time." And from then on, it was 7-day weeks. 7-day weeks, every day, Saturday, Sunday, for almost 6 months. Just long days, sitting in a workshop. I just remember days and days of working with the crew and then waving them all off at 5 o'clock at night and then going to each one of their workstations and starting to redo their work, repainting, re-hair working. And the quality of the work was amazing, and I learned an incredible amount from Kevin, especially on quality control. But when I look back on it, I just go, "Oh, what a tough time." And also, it was bittersweet for me because I'd just done Blade. I just finished Blade with Stephen Norrington, and and I found out that after I accepted working on Sleepy Hollow, that New Line were interested in me in doing Austin Powers and heading the Austin Powers makeup and doing Fat Bastard and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So as I headed off to go and do Sleepy Hollow, I was like, "Oh, I could have been doing Austin Powers, which might have been fun." But I do look back on Sleepy Hollow with fond memories, and like I say, Tim, I'm a bit confused by at times. I just didn't know where his head was at. But I'm sure he was under massive amount of pressure from Paramount and didn't really give a monkeys that the makeup effects guy was like, "Look, what do you want?" I just need to know what you want. But apart from that, the cast were amazing, and I got to work with people like Christopher Lee and obviously Richard Griffiths and just a whole bunch of English actors who I'd been fans of when I was living in England. And it was a great experience for me because I got to go back to England. I hadn't been back for about 6 years, and I got to go back and work on this really, really cool project. And things like production design, I mean, it was just like walking into Tim Burton's imagination. So, so that was cool.
What was your second question, Tommy?
Oh, my second question was, what was your favorite and most fun scene to work on in the My Bloody Valentine 3D remake?
Well, it was fun killing Todd the truck driver, only because we got to stare at Betsy Rubin naked all night long. So that was fun. Not because of anything to do with killing him, because he's Todd Farmer, lovely guy, but Betsy was stark naked all night long. No, but in truth, it was fun killing Kevin Teague, with a pickaxe to the head. I said pickaxe on the head, I mean, they're all killed with a pickaxe to the head, right? But, the guy who basically says, "Oh shit," just as he gets pickaxed, he gets rammed onto the pickaxe. Right. That was kind of fun, because we made this big mechanical puppet for him to go onto. What else? And killing Brandy with the shovel in the mouth, because I felt like we were really homaging Tom Savini there. You know, I was in a mine in Pittsburgh with a shovel in somebody's mouth. So I felt like I'd done my my little bit of Tom Savini, you know, tip of the hat to Tom there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who is still, of course, you know, one of my idols and kind of the guy who, you know, inspired me. So what was your favorite kill in it, Tommy? What did you like in Valentine?
Oh, God, I would have to say some of my favorite scenes was the one when they're on the porch and that guy got the pickaxe through the mouth. And then...
Yeah, Tom Atkins, I completely forgot. I probably agree, actually. Ripping Tom Atkins' jaw off was a big moment for me. Only because it was Tom Atkins, first of all, from The Fog and Creepshow and all that, but also because one thing we'd done there was we actually made... one thing I have to say about the kills in Valentine is there wasn't a lot of CGI on it. You know, we brought along all of the mechanical heads, and I think they thought they were going to have to do a lot of CGI work, and then when the CGI guys saw what we'd done, they were like, wow, we don't have to do a lot of cleanup on this, which was nice. It was really a kind of back to old school approach. But one thing we'd done on that, I knew we were going to have to do things very, very quickly. So we made this Tom Atkins head, and we made the jaw fix on with magnets. So you could actually put it straight back on immediately. It would rip off and then immediately go back on. So we're filming it, and the crew don't realize this. None of them know, especially the camera guy, who's a big effects nut and kind of has worked on a lot of effects films. So we rip off the first jaw, and everyone's like, whoa, that's great. Reset, and we'll go again. And immediately the whole crew kind of started to head towards the craft service table, you know. They all thought, all right, cup of coffee, 10 minutes, have a donut, relax. And I just pushed the jaw on it, and it's because of the magnets and the way it's built, the whole jaw just fixed back on without a seam. And I was like, done. And they were all like, what? I was like, no, done, ready to go again. And I think they were all pissed off. They were all like, well, where's the 10 minutes? Where's the 15 minutes? But I built it because I knew we were going to have no time to turn around. So that worked out really well. And also Tom Atkins was brilliant at working with the denture I'd made that went into his mouth with the top end of the pickaxe. So that was a great kill. And it was also, I love it in the movie when you have the POV of Tom and you can see the pickaxe handle sticking out of his mouth. So, yeah, I love that. I loved when we saw it in the screening and, you know, you actually hear the jaw land, you know, right at the back of the cinema because of the surround sound. So yeah, they were all fun kills. Anytime I get to kill anyone, I'm always a happy chap, so.
Yeah.
They're all memorable. Every death to me is memorable, Tommy.
I think that's a good message for everybody out there.
Of course.
Yeah.
If you're gonna kill, have fun with it, honestly.
Exactly. Anything else, Tommy?
Yeah, one quick thing. What was it like working with Jensen Ackles on the set?
Jensen was great. What I found most useful about working with Jensen Ackles was meeting girls off-set and then telling them that I'd even touched Jensen Ackles or been near him, because girls would immediately be a lot more interested in me. So that was the greatest thing about working with Jensen Ackles. You know, I could just walk up to any girl who was like 18. I was in a restaurant one night eating, and some girl's like, you know, some very cute girl was very near to me, and she'd had a little bit to drink. And she started quizzing me about something, and I said, oh, I'm working on a film. I think she heard the English accent and said, oh, you're English. And I was like, well, yes, of course I am. And she was like, oh, what are you doing in Pittsburgh? And I said, I'm working on a movie. She said, is there anyone famous in it? And I have to say, I don't really know Jensen that well. And I was like, oh, just this guy called Jensen Ackles. And then this girl immediately had several orgasms on the chair, I think. And I was like, yes, I touched him with this hand, you know, and she was like, touch me with that hand. So that was the best thing about working with Jensen Ackles. But no, he was great fun, and particularly in the sequence when he, at the beginning of the movie, when Harry gets shot in front of him and Jensen gets sprayed with blood. It was me who sprayed him with blood. And I think it was a bit more in the gun than I'd actually anticipated. So I don't think Jensen was expecting quite the load in the face he got from me. Does that sound wrong?
Just a little bit.
But he took it all in his stride. It was like, I think they had to cut pretty quickly on that because it was like, action, spray. And then Jensen was like, whoa. And then he immediately went, holy shit. You know? So they had to cut just before he said holy shit. But Jensen was a lot of fun. All the actors were a lot of fun. You know, but it was great for me working with, obviously, Kevin Tighe and Tom Atkins, because, you know, I would just kind of go up to Kevin Tighe and do lines from Roadhouse, which he'd be like, what line's that? And I'd be like, dude, Roadhouse. And he'd be like, oh, yeah.
Already forgotten that one.
So I punched him in the face and said, Roadhouse, remember that?
Thanks for calling in, Tommy.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call, Gary.
Thanks, Tommy. Take it easy, buddy. Go and see Valentine again, please. We need your money.
Or just send Gary some money.
That's right. No, go see the movie again. Go and pay another $3 extra for your 3D specs.
Exactly. Well, we also got Astro on the line.
Hey, what was it like working on Candyman?
Candyman, the first one or the third one? Because I did 1 and 3.
The first one.
The first one, great. Only because, for me it was great because I was a big fan of the Clive Barker novel. You know, the story, it's The Forbidden, right? You know, right. I'm a huge fan of it, and then I can't remember the name of it. The Forbidden. So I was a big fan to see how it was going to be worked out. And we knew very early on that there was something special about that film. I don't know what it was, but we'd just done Hellraiser, and all the guys had gone off to Carolina to work on Hellraiser, and we were left back and working on all the stuff for Candyman. So, yeah, it was really strange. We had this feeling that it was going to be successful. The one funny story I can tell about that film is that when we did the hook for the Candyman, you know, his hand hook, and we designed this very kind of weird, it wasn't just kind of a traditional, like, captain hook kind of thing, it was this weird kind of 70-degree kind of bend thing. And I thought, oh, what I'll do is I'll go to a proper blacksmith and have him hammer this thing up and make it out of metal, and we'll mold it from that, and it'll look really cool. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I thought that's the way to do it. And we needed a metal one anyway, so we could smash through things.
Right.
So I took it to this local, we were working at Pinewood Studios in England, and there was a little kind of blacksmithy shop down the street where this guy had got like teapots and made all kinds of like interesting brass and iron hardware, you know, and did horseshoes and stuff. So I took it to him and I gave him the drawings, and I'm like, look, this is what the hook is, and I'm going to mold it later on and put blood tubing through it. And he's like, oh, okay. And he looked at me kind of weird. And then a week later, he called me up and he said, this hook's ready. And I turned up at his little blacksmith shop, and he's standing there, and I can see the hook hanging behind him on the shelf behind. And I said, right, how much is it? And he said, it's like £25. And I hope I'm not going to offend anybody now with the way this story's going to go, but please forgive me, and this is exactly how the story is. But I said, yeah. I said, great, £25. He said, can I ask you a question? And I said, yes. I said, is it for he said, is this for a horror film? And I said, yes, I told you it was for a horror film called Candyman, and it's the weapon. He said, yes, I can't let you have this. And I said, I'm sorry? He said, I can't let you have this. And I said, why? And he said, me and my son love the good Lord Jesus. And we love God. And we're not going to give you a weapon that's going to be used in a horror movie killing people. And I was like, okay. Look, it was like 4 feet away. I just wanted to lean over and grab it. And I'm like, please, I need that to mold it. And he's like, yes, well, I know you need it, and it's, you know, but I'm not going to do that. We're not going to promote violence in the movies. So I had to leave. It there. And a week later, I sent someone back to his shop and bought one of his teapots, and I did a murder in a movie with it. And filmed it, and then sent him pictures of the blood with the little teapot he'd used. But he wouldn't let me have it, and that's all I can remember from Candyman. So this guy had made this bloody hook for me, and I was behind the crunch, and because of his love of the good Lord Jesus, which I'm sure the good Lord Jesus, you know, in the Bible, you know, where they were doing movies at the time, would have been quite fine with it. But I couldn't get the bloody thing off him, so we had to make it ourselves in the end. But so that's one of the stories I can remember from that. But apart from that, obviously bees and just getting stung by bees. Yeah. They're always very careful on when we do Candyman movies to make sure that everyone knows that no one got stung by a bee, and it's complete lies. Everyone gets stung by a bloody bee. Oh, no one got stung by bees during the film. It's like I got stung like 8 times, you know. And Tony Todd, the poor swine, I mean, he's like a pincushion. You know, I mean, and but they do use Dr. Norman Gary, who does all the bee work and who's kind of a bee genius. He you know, he always has a hive at the place where he does it. He turns up 2 weeks before, and he breeds all the bees up, and then he puts pheromone on Tony, and then the bees crawl all over him. And they use juvenile bees. I said beans then. Juvenile bees, because I didn't know this, but having done my Candyman movies, I do. Juvenile bees, their stingers are soft. I guess they don't have Viagra in Bee World, but their stingers are a bit soft, so they can't actually sting you. So those are the ones we put in his mouth and on his face, you know, and those are the ones we do that. But Tony always gets stung. He's always like, I just got bloody stung, you know. So, you know, and the other weird thing is as soon as they get the bees on, they have to leave the lights off because the bees race towards the lights.
Right.
So as soon as they turn all the lights on, all the bees just immediately head toward the light, and you can hear them burning in the lights. You know, it's like sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. So, it's kind of, maybe they've all seen Poltergeist or something, because it's like, run to the light, and all the bees are flying up to the light. So it is weird. Usually the people who get stung the most are the poor grips and electricians, because all the bees kind of just tend to hide in the cables and the stuff. So yeah, and the noise of the bees is the thing that I always remember from Candyman. But Tony Todd, great fun, and I'm very proud of the work we did on Candyman 1. And 3 even, I did some stuff on that. Candyman 3 is the only film I've ever been stopped by the animal protection people. Because I did a scene where a bee crawled out of an egg, and this woman told me that I was torturing the bee by putting him in the egg. I said, how do you know? Is he complaining? She said, that bee is being tortured. He's not happy. And she said, he doesn't want to crawl out of that egg. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, fair enough. Sorry, Mr. B.
His agent was writing it.
He was. I personally just think he'd been out the night before, and, he was just, he was doing a Val Kilmer thing, but no, what can you do? So, yes, it was great fun working on Candyman, and, and again, it's always funny because people always have such a strong reaction to that film, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried saying Candyman like 3 times in the mirror?
All the time. Every night. Yeah. I say every night. I don't care about any of that stuff, you know what I mean? No problem with that sort of stuff. I'll say it in front of anybody.
Anything else?
I challenge the devil any chance I get. That's me.
Astro? Was that it?
My second question was, what was it like working on Wishmaster?
Wishmaster. Very interesting. Good and bad. It's always good and bad with me, isn't it? Everyone's asking the questions about the tricky ones for me. Well, I'll tell you a story about Wishmaster. Obviously, Wishmaster was directed by Bob Kurtzman. Mm-hmm. And as you all probably know, Bob Kurtzman is pretty much a profound effects guy himself, one of the co-members of KMB Effects. So then the question you must ask yourselves, guys, is why was Gary Tunnicliffe doing effects on a KMB directed movie? Why weren't KMB Effects doing all of the film? Right. Have you ever wondered that?
Yes.
Couldn't be anything but a headache. Him over your shoulder at all times.
The truth of the matter is when Wishmaster was written by the wonderful, beautiful, and incredibly talented Peter Atkins, a good friend of mine, who was just actually, I have to say, give a shout out to Peter. He's just got back from hospital. His appendix exploded. Nice. So he's just got back from hospital. But when that film was written, Peter told me that basically Live Entertainment, who did the film, were interviewing every effects company in LA. And I was one of them. And so I went in, and I thought, the best way to go into this film is to sell myself out of it. So I walked in, and basically I said to them, I wouldn't hire me if I was you. So which caught them by a complete surprise. They're like, what? And I said, yeah, don't hire me. I figured I'd go on the negative sell, And they said, what do you mean? And I said, look, if I was you, why don't you hire someone really, really good, like a Rick Baker or a Greg Canham or somebody to do the Wishmaster makeup, hire somebody really, really cheap to do all of the gory stuff, and then hire someone like me to do some of the makeup effectsy stuff. And they were like, interesting. And I said, that way you can spread your money out, you'll get bang for buck, it'll be done kind of the way they used to do the Freddy Krueger movies in the 80s, get a bunch of different effects houses, and they'll all work really, really hard. And they said, interesting. And I walked down, and I thought, I've got them. I'll get something out of that, I know I will. And then I heard a week later that Bob Kurtzman had got the gig to direct the film, and I thought, well, that's the end of that, I mean, I've got no chance in holy hell KMB are going to do all of the effects. And I'd never even met Bob Kurtzman. I'd met Greg and I'd met Howard, but I'd never even met Bob. So I get a call suddenly, can you come and meet with Bob Kurtzman at KMB? And I'm like, what the hell's this about? So I trundle over to KMB. I walk into the office to meet Bob Kurtzman, and Bob's opening words to me, and I kid you not, were, hey, did you blow everyone at Live Entertainment? Because I tried to get you fired off this movie, and they wouldn't. And I was like, I only blew 4 of them.
You picked the right ones.
I was like, not everybody, no. And he said, I tried to get you fired, but they wouldn't fire me. They told me I had to use you for some of the effects. So he's like, I'm fine with that, and we'll divvy it up. And he gave me a couple of effects that I was really surprised, most notably the one effect I wanted to do, which was the guy's skeleton tearing out of the guy on the floor, which I really wanted to do, and I was really happy the way it came out. And KMB did a lot of the other stuff and obviously handled Andrew Divoff's makeup. But it became tricky down the line because me and Greg Nicotero bumped heads on various things. I think Greg, at times I was very kind of like, well, they need another one of these makeups, how much is it going to be? And Greg was like, what do you mean, why are you charging? We're doing that other makeup for free. And I go, you're doing it for free because he's a partner in your company. I'm not a partner in your company. I'd like to get paid, I mean, sorry to be an asshole here, but I need to get paid, So that caused a few bumps down the line. But the one contribution I'm really, really happy that I made to that film, which is something that that probably isn't seen on screen, which is Gerrit Immel had applied Andrew's makeup the very first day, and Andrew had never really worn a makeup like that, and he was kind of getting to grips with it. And I was doing another makeup in the room at the same time, doing it on somebody else. And they'd finished his makeup, and he was kind of sitting there, just kind of a bit weirded out. Really, I could tell he was a bit weirded out. And I sat down with Andrew for 5 minutes, and obviously having worked with Doug Bradley in his makeup for such a long time, we've talked about the process and what wearing a makeup does to you. So I sat talking to Andrew, who's a really nice guy, and I've been a fan of his work anyway for a long time. So I just said, can I give you a piece of advice? And he said, yeah, what's that? And I said, why don't you go to your dressing room and just sit in front of the makeup mirror, sit in front of a mirror for kind of 10, 15 minutes, and just kind of look what your face does. Because a lot of times the problems you have when you put a makeup on somebody is they tend to overact. They tend to do too much. And they don't realize that when you put a makeup on somebody, the makeup is what we call, it's screaming at the audience. It's like Doug when he wears pinhead. He doesn't have to do very little. The less he does, the better, because the makeup's already screaming volumes. And the same with the Wishmaster makeup or any makeup, really. It's doing so much work for you already that the less you do, the more kind of subtle a performance and a more nuanced performance I think you get. So I said to Andrew, if you want my advice, before you go on set, ask them for 10, 15 minutes where you can just be on your own, look in the mirror and play with expressions and see what your face does and how it looks good, and furrow your brow and see what a smile looks like and all that. Because obviously, if you're suddenly doing a scene where you're going to smile, you don't know how that smile might read. And he was great. I think he went and did that. But at the end of the show, he gave me a gift. He gave me a book, and he'd written in it, thank you for that advice. It proved absolutely invaluable, and I really, really appreciate it. And I'd barely spoken to him throughout the show, apart from like, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. But he'd really taken it to heart. And I've met Andrew several times since, and he always remembers my name, and he's always like, hey, how are you? And good to see you. And, he always reminds me about that piece of advice. So that's my little bit of memory from Wishmaster. So I'm always proud of that. But, yeah, I mean, it was a fun film to work on and lots of effects. The only other thing that was really wacky about Wishmaster was when we got evacuated from the set, because when they blew up the statues at the end, one of them caught fire, and it burnt the whole set almost down. It actually melted one of the cameras. So 1 minute we're all on set, and the next thing we're all being raced out of the set because of a huge torrent of fire. But I always really loved Bob Kurtzman. I thought Bob Kurtzman was a real straight shooter. Bob was very direct and to the point, and I've met him several times since, now that he's gone back to Ohio and he's doing his thing there. So I like Bob. I like working with Bob. Were you a fan of Wishmaster?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think John actually has a Wishmaster action figure.
Yeah,
oh, really?
The Tom McFarlane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those I'm a huge fan of those. I think I've got it too. I've got them all in my garage. I've got every one of the Movie Maniacs on the wall.
Yeah.
I'm a geek as well. I buy all that stuff. What you got it right.
Is that extra special though? Like seeing something like you created, like in action figure form?
Oh, totally. You kidding? Dude, it's like a raging hard-on moment when you suddenly see something you've created. And like, the weird thing is they usually get so much better as action figures than what you actually did. Like when NECA did all of the Hellraiser figures, their costumes were so much better than the ones I've done. I'm always like, oh yeah, I wish we could have afforded to do that, But no, it's freaking awesome, and it's like, I mean, I know Tommy earlier on was talking about Sleepy Hollow. The greatest thing about Sleepy Hollow was when some guys came to set to take photos, and everyone seemed to be ignoring them, but I found out they were from McFarlane. So I really buddied up to them and took them round and showed them everything, and I was being extra friendly and, hey, anything I can do for you guys and get you some, some life casts and stuff. And they were like, oh, yeah, thank you so much. And later on, Kevin Yeager was like, why are you being pally to those guys? And I was like, they're from McFarlane. And he's like, who are they? And I was like, don't worry about it, Kevin, my old friend. And off he went. And, of course, 6 months later, I got the biggest boxes turn up at my workshop you've ever seen, with like 6 copies of everything. And a letter from one of the guys saying, anytime you want anything, just give us a call. And I did. Many years afterwards, I'd be like, oh, I like those. And they'd always send me everything. So they were great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's why I jumped at the chance with Necker. I was like, when they mentioned Hellraiser characters, I was very cool with Randy Falk and those guys, and they were great. They let me, if you saw the Hellraiser figures, they have like a bio on the back of them, and I wrote all the bios for them as well, and they were great. They supplied me with tons of toys. I was upset they didn't carry on to the entire range of cenobites, but there's only so many cenobites you can sell, right?
Right. Do you keep anything else from the movies, like the actual sculptures or makeup or anything?
I keep hair of all the actors. No.
Oh, that's creepy.
And toenail clippings. And I steal their underwear when they're on set.
I don't blame you there.
I've got kind of a cabinet in my house which has really weird things. I mean, not toenails and hair, obviously, but little bits and pieces that people like. I'll give you an example. Like I have Van Helsing's ring from Dracula 2000, and just little bits and pieces. So I mean, you have to be careful, otherwise your house can tend to look a bit like Planet Hollywood. So I mean, and I don't like it's like, oh, I think I'll have that stripped corpse from that movie hanging in my front door. So it tends to be little knickknacks that people look at and go, oh, that's the so-and-so from, like I have Danny Masterson's belt buckle from Dracula 2000, and I have, I'm trying to think what else. I can't get to my cabinet, but there's just little knickknacks, really. Carrie Wura on Hellraiser, she went to Venice and got engaged, and she brought me back a piece of glass of a demon. And she said, we had to buy this for you because you're kind of a demon, so we bought you a demon piece of glass. So I keep things like that. And then what I also do is, during every film that I work on, I buy a new a moleskin. Do you know what a moleskin is?
No.
It's like a little notebook,
Oh, okay.
Hemingway used to have one, apparently. So I carry one of those on me, and what I do is, during the shooting time, I go up to the actors at various times, and directors and producers, and I just say, hey, what are you thinking right now? Or write something in my book for me. And they write notes, to me, or they write what they're feeling on the day. And it can range from everything like, hey, Gary, or like, best wishes, kisses, Johnny Depp. Or it can be like, God, I hate this fucking movie, I want to die, or, like in Romania, a lot of people would write things like, oh, I miss American cheeseburgers, and stuff like that. But over the years, it's been funny because certain actors have gone on to become very, very famous, or like one night I was doing a movie in Romania, and we were doing effects on this really bad film. I was actually doing another film at the time, but I'd got my crew there doing a film with Tara Reid. And I was in the hotel talking to my crew, and Tara came in, and Tara had a little bit to drink.
Imagine that.
And she sat next to me, and then proceeded, and I said, oh, Tara, write something in my book. And then she proceeded then to write 22 pages of utter dribble. Utter dribble. And then she stood up, and her boob fell out of her dress. And then she staggered off to the elevator. It was a great night. And I have this moleskin book, and like half of it's in dark blue pen, and it's just utter drivel, utter, stream of consciousness. Tara Reid, completely drunk, writing all this stuff down. So those are my collection things. And what I do is there's a pocket in the back of it as well, and I keep my hotel keys in there, and like a call sheet sometimes if it's got really mad things like you look at the call sheet and realize I've just done a 4-hour turnaround. Or Lance Henriksen will write something, or we did like stills of Lance for a book, and he put his stills in there. So I have this little like library of moleskins, which are a reference of all my movies. And liaisons with young ladies that I might have had on the movie. I get them to write stuff, and and then we did this terrible thing, which I don't do anymore. Honestly, I don't. But me and the producers will sometimes, and various members of the crew, will make a top 10 of all the girls on the set. Number one being the girl we'd most like to have a chat with. It's right the way down to the bottom, and then we do a graph of which one is the top rated and who's number 1 and number 3, and they all have nicknames usually, like they'll be called Leather Pants or Cool Hair or Nice Makeup Girl, So it's weird. So that's our other thing. It's like
Hello, am I on?
Yeah, just hold on, Chris.
We call it the pig graph. So I mean, sometimes we do that. So these little books could bury me as well. But I've always figured when I write my biography years from now, I'll go back to these books and they'll be a source of reference. So that's what I tend to keep from the movies.
Thanks for calling in, Astro.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Astro. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have Chris here on the line.
Yes, hello, I have a question
Chris is
for
desperate
Gary.
to get on.
Yeah, he's desperate.
Yeah, how was it like working on Within the Rock? I know that's your first directed horror movie.
Oh my God! It was you who saw it.
Yeah, that's a cult classic. I love that movie.
It's a cult classic.
He was bringing it up in the
It's
chat
the
room.
classic.
Did you just call it a cult classic? Holy moly! I'll get your address and phone number. I'll send you a bouquet of something and a bottle of something. Wow, how was it working on Within the Rock? Wow, good Lord. Now, there's a question I wasn't expecting to be asked. The most fun you can have with your clothes on, I think, apart from the fact that the producers made it kind of miserable for me. I had one producer on that who I wanted to cheerfully kill. Yeah, Within the Rock was a weird situation. I mean, here's the story of how that happened, and please, guys, if I talk for too long, feel free to just yank the chain on me. I'd been asked by the production company, by these producers, which was Stanley Isaac, Scott McGinnis, and the great Robert Patrick, would I be interested in directing the film? And I said yes, and they gave me the script for Humanoids of the Deep Part 2, which was utter shite. It was, I mean, as I turned each page, the stink coming off it was just horrendous. So I read it and I said, oh, this is great, I'd love to direct it, thank you, yes, please, because at that point I would have directed a wedding video for anybody. So, but I said, yeah, I'll direct this, but I also have this other script I've been working on. And they said, really? What's it called? And I said, it's called Within the Rock. And I said, it's about a bunch of guys on an asteroid that's heading towards the Earth, and we're going to send some miners up there to sort it out, you know? Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, great, send us, how much of the script have you written? And I said, oh, I'm about 50 pages in. And they said, send it tomorrow. So that night I wrote 50 pages. Because I was lying.
Right.
And they called me back the next day and said, this is quite good. When will it be finished? And I went, oh, end of the week, at which point my girlfriend's going, oh, for God's sake, no, shut up, don't lie again. So I wrote it, finished it at the end of the week, and we sent it to them, and they said, this is pretty good, maybe a little polish and a rewrite. And then a week later, we went to a prison, and we pitched it to them, and they said immediately, yes, we'll do it. And I think it was Robert Patrick who got it made more than anyone else. But 3 months later, we were shooting the bloody thing, so it was insane. I mean, there are obviously a million different things I'd do differently now if I went back and did it. But as I'm sure you've noticed, Chris, the one thing about Within the Rock that gives it testimony to this day is when you hear the story and you know the story, that film came out a year before Armageddon.
Yeah, Armageddon basically ripped it off. Yeah.
Which is weird, right? I mean, it's kind of freaky. I mean, as soon as I tell people it's about an asteroid heading for the Earth and they send a bunch of miners up to dig holes in the asteroid to blow it up, everyone goes, oh, like Armageddon. And I go, yeah, but mine came out a year before. And I go, right. Now, when it happened, people saw Armageddon and they said, you should sue Michael Bay. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. How to spell career suicide? Sue Michael Bay. So I didn't sue Michael Bay. All I can assume is that somebody might have got a whiff of my idea. The one thing I never forget was there's a line in Within the Rock where they say, oh, why don't we just blow this rock up, blow the asteroid up? And the female doctor says, the physicist says, yeah, that's a great idea. Chunks of rock the size of Kansas raining down on the Earth. And then I remember sitting in the theater watching Armageddon and hearing Billy Bob Thornton saying, it's a chunk of rock the size of Texas, sir. And me going, oh, oh, fuck. So, yeah, I mean, the only good thing about Within the Rock really was that everyone was telling me when I finished directing it, oh, you're going to become a huge successful director and it's going to be great. And, of course, as you can probably tell, I didn't, and it didn't happen. But it's a good thing because had I become a big successful director after that, I would have become the most arrogant prick on the planet. So, 6 months after doing that film, I was sweeping up my workshop trying to get rent, make rent on my workshop because I had no work, and I'd sunk all of my personal fee off that film into the model effects and some digital stuff, which was awful. The digital effects were just lame. But I mean, I still think it stands up pretty well as a, I mean, the funny thing is now is that after that film was made, Sci-Fi Channel premiered it, and it did really well on Sci-Fi Channel. And since then, I mean, Sci-Fi Channel movies, I don't know what you think, but I think they tend to not be so great.
Yeah, that kind of takes a word out of our mouth.
So I was pretty happy with the way Within the Night came out, and occasionally I meet people like yourself who say really nice things about it. So, I think it holds up pretty well. I mean, some of the dialogue's definitely a bit, rank. I mean, there's one line that, whenever I think about it, I have to cringe, which is the line when someone says, they find out that the planet they're on isn't so much a planet, but it's got a creature buried in the center of it, and this ancient race had buried this creature in a platinum-lined chamber and jettisoned it into space, and over millions of years, rock had attached itself to the outside of the planet, and that's what the asteroid was. And someone says, so this isn't a floating moon, it's more like a floating Alcatraz. And someone says, yeah, and we gave this thing parole. And someone says, yeah, and now it's time to give it the chair. And, man, that's just shit dialogue, isn't it? It's like, even now I watch and go, oh, did I really write that? I'm sure that sounded great at 3 o'clock in the morning in my bedroom when I was writing, going, yeah, give it the chair, man! But I've just written a script, actually, which is just being optioned right now, which I have to say the dialogue is a lot better on, and I'm much happier with. So I'm really hoping that in the next 6 months I might get to make this film called No Man's Land, which is a World War I horror film. Takes place on Christmas Eve in World War I, and it's a really brutal kind of horror film. So stick around, and hopefully you'll get to see that, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting to make that one. So
yeah. Thanks for calling in, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, thanks.
Wow, Within the Rock. Can you believe that, guys? Wow.
Yeah.
That was a new one on me.
Yeah, that's the first one I directed back in 1996 when I was a young boy of 26.
He was in the chat room talking about it.
Wow.
I told him to call in and ask.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we got El Santo on the line.
Yes, sir. Big fan of your work.
Thanks, El Santo.
The horror movies. I want to ask a question about the new project that you're doing that's completed, the Jack and the Beanstalk.
Oh, wow!
How's that? How that went?
I mean, it's a strange one. It's strange to talk about Jack and the Beanstalk on this show. There's not a lot of killing in it. You know what I mean? Jack and the Beanstalk is G-rated, not PG.
Oh, okay.
It's G-rated. But I mean, honestly, truthfully, I love doing kids' films. They're hilarious fun. They really are great fun. I mean, it's so weird for me to be on a film set where I'm not going home covered in blood. It's very trippy. But I really do enjoy doing these films, and I get to pull in all kinds of genre actors who I would normally never get to work with, and I get to basically goof off with them, like Gilbert Gottfried and Christopher Lloyd and Chevy Chase. And I get to work with James Earl Jones, which, I mean, is just amazing, I really enjoyed doing Jack and the Beanstalk, and the film is really, really cool. Came out really, really cool. I mean, it's not a film that, that probably people on this radio show would check out. But if they have got children, then I tried to make a film that you could watch with kids and not be bored. I mean, I just feel, I don't have kids myself, but I always think it's really bad for parents who've got 5- and 6-year-olds that they have to go and sit and watch these movies that are just trite, ridiculous crap, or a singing dinosaur or something. So I've tried to make children's films that have stuff for adults in there. So, when I cast Wallace Shawn as a shopkeeper in the film, and he's trying to do a trade with Jack and the Beanstalk, and Wallace Shawn says, I'll trade you some iocane powder. Oh, no, it's too poisonous. I'm hoping that every adult in the audience goes, you know what I mean? So there's lots of that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to make a film that is, whilst it's a G-rated children's fare, that adults can sit there and go, you know what, that was pretty funny. And I did Hansel and Gretel a few years ago, and what was great for me within that was, just as an effects guy, I managed to give the witch every line that Meg Mucklebones, the witch in Legend, says. So as a fan of Rob Bottin's witch in that film, I gave her every line that Rob Picardo says, it's like, juicy boy, and indeed I do. So there's always those kind of weird little tips of the hat I try and do. So And Gilbert Gottfried, I have to tell you, working on a children's film, and, everyone minding their P's and Q's, Gilbert Gottfried swears like a trooper non-stop. His language is so filthy. And when you get a 9-year-old, when you get an 8-year-old say to Gilbert Gottfried, are you going to do that line again? And he goes, shut the fuck up. You have to applaud him. Do you know what I mean? Or he'll call me all the time and say, that little girl who was in the film, when's she 18? I'm like, 9 years, Gilbert. He's like, I've got a while to wait, huh? I'm like, Gilbert, you're wrong, So, I mean, he was hilarious, and he would pull out some stuff all day long. He'd say just stuff that would make you cringe. He was very funny. And of course, Chevy Chase was great. We did a scene with Christopher Lloyd where Christopher plays the headmaster of the school with the kids, and every piece of information on the board behind him is time travel equation, including a picture of the flux capacitor with the words, must remember this written on the chalkboard. So, no, great fun. Like I say, weird that I don't kill anyone, and, we don't have any bloodshed in the films, but it's actually kind of refreshing,
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird to get away from that and to suddenly go off and do these. When I did the first film, I did Hansel and Gretel. I was right in the middle of doing Halloween when I got offered the gig. And they said, we'd like you to direct Hansel and Gretel. And I was like, oh, great, dark, Grimm's Tale, Hansel and Gretel, really evil and nasty. They're like, no, children's film. I'm like, this is Gary Tunnicliffe on the phone. Gary Tunnicliffe, killer, assassin, murderer, blood, spurt, death. And they're like, yeah, we know. I'm like, okay, I don't know why you're calling me, but if you want to pay me to do it, fantastic. And the same with Jack and the Beanstalk. And now I'm supposed to be doing a Snow White as well at some point, maybe next year or so. So they're fun. They're like a holiday where I get to go off and just be a normal, caring person. But of course, anyone who knows my resume knows the complete opposite. So
yeah.
So no, but good fun. So I right now it's being looked at by several of the major studios for possible distribution. So keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah. Just let everybody know, if you go over to Gary's website, which is 2hoursinthedark.com, I think you can see some pictures from Jack and the Beanstalk.
Are they? Really?
I think, if not, they're on. I know I saw them somewhere.
I know they might be on there. There's a guy in England. It's not me. I don't do it. It's a guy called Dave Robinson who does a fan site about me, which sounds incredibly egotistical, called GaryJTunnicliffe.com, and that's got a bunch of photos on it. But so that's got some photos from Jack on it. But and there's also, you can also check out Avalon Family Films. They've got a whole ton of photos on there. Mm-hmm. But yes, the fan site is always a weird one, because when he asked if he could do that, I was like, if you really believe anyone's interested in being a fan, then yes, go ahead. But it's way too egotistical for me to even suggest it. But he's always ringing me and telling me how many thousands of people have checked it out, or who's looking at the site. So it's always nice to know that people are actually reading that stuff, and we try to keep it fairly updated. I just sent a whole slew of photos from behind the scenes of My Bloody Valentine, which will hopefully be put up in the next couple of weeks. So
I think there's some already up there.
Oh, really? Well, I sent him a ton of new photos, like about 2 days ago. So there should be a whole ton of the silicon heads of Tom's jaw being ripped off, and the Kevin Teague puppet, and various, goofing around on set. So
yeah, I was reading the Q&A on there, and I just I noticed that you said you used the Zappagap. I used to use that when I was like into Warhammer figures.
Well, I'll tell you, I believe that the special effects industry is held together with Zappagap, duct tape, and black spray paint. I've always said that. Zappagap holds us together, So, I mean, if in doubt, that. And, when you're doing the wargaming figure, do you use the accelerator?
Troy, do we use?
Sometimes, yeah.
When you spray the accelerator and it goes like super hot, super quick, and sizzles in front of you and gives off cyanide gas.
I just like the effect more than anything. I don't mind holding it for like 5 minutes, but.
Well, the great thing about Zappagap, of course, is when you spray it with the accelerator, it gets very, very thin. So if you're holding something, it has a tendency to run down your arm, and then goes boiling hot in seconds. So I mean, any good special effects guy's got several burn marks on his fingers, or you have really stiff fingers because your fingers get covered in it. You know what I mean? But no, Zappagap, fantastic stuff. God bless whoever invented that stuff. Although I hear wasn't Zappagap developed for Vietnam, for the war?
I think so. I think they used to put it in their cuts.
Yeah, they used to glue themselves together, Yeah. How sick is that,
They do that in professional wrestling, too, I believe.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
I only found out the other night that I didn't realize I always wondered how wrestlers bled, on kind of cue, and I was watching Mickey Rourke talking about how they used to hide a bit of razor blade in their wristband, and then they would cut themselves on the head, and then they would hold their breath and then breathe out, and the blood would spurt out of their heads. Mm-hmm. I never knew they did that. Look at that, I'm an effects guy. I always assumed it was like a bottle of blood or something, but I didn't realize they actually cut themselves up.
Yeah.
They'll also take aspirin a lot to thin out the blood.
Oh, really? I'm going to see if I can talk actors into doing that. Okay, in this scene where we rip your guts out.
Don't forget to take a lot of aspirin.
There were a couple of actors on the Adam Gerash film Autopsy I quite liked them too, actually. We're actually going to disembowel you in this scene. You whiny bitch.
Is there any actors you would have liked to actually disembowel?
You know what? I always tend to get on really, really well with actors. I'm trying to think. And I'm not afraid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not afraid at all to kind of say, "Oh, that person's an asshole."
Right.
So I'm just trying to think of anyone who's really, really got my back up. I tend to have a kind of way of defeating the issue before it gets started, which is anyone I'm going to be gluing the makeup on. The first time I meet them, I tell them they're going to hate me because, of the repeating of the process and that kind of thing. And, they're usually like, no. And then 3 days later, like, yeah, I hate your guts, But I tend to be kind of I realize that it's kind of a miserable situation for actors to go through a long prosthetic procedure. Mm-hmm. And I try to be very aware of that. So I have little tricks, like there are certain actors who come in and they're not very happy, but I've always found if you can find out in advance what kind of music they like, then you can, if you have a CD, it's very, very hard for people to stay miserable when they have songs that they really, really like around them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I tend to casually put the CD player on. People have been a bit tricky to work with. I did a live cast on John Cusack once for a film called 1408. I didn't do the makeup effects, I just did a live cast on him. And they'd said, we have to do a live cast for a possible burn maker. And I said, yeah, sure. And I was like, wow, John Cusack, that would be kind of fun to meet him. And I said I can do it any time of the day. And they said, any time of the day. And I said, yeah. And they said, 2 a.m. And I was like, okay. And then his assistant called me and said, he might not even show up,
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, okay. And they said, he hates this stuff. He really hates it. So I was like, okay. So, we were there at 2 a.m. and I knew he liked The Clash, so I got London's Calling playing in the studio when he came in, and I knew he liked espresso coffee, so we got a couple of espressos lined up, and he came in, he said, so we got to this live cast thing, and he was really kind of very dour, very kind of didn't want to chat, didn't want to do anything. And then he read the paper as I did the live cast, which it doesn't sound that hard, but it's not like he read it, he placed the newspaper on the table and read it. He held it in front of him at like at arm's length, like somebody sitting in a park reading a newspaper. Right. And I had to do the live cast around him. And he's like, is this okay? And I'm like, yeah, because I really want to read the newspaper. And I'm like, okay. So I did it around him. And he was very dour, and he never cracked and didn't really talk about anything. And then I finished it, and he was like, that was great. That was fantastic. Can I go now? And I was like, yep. And he went out and left. But he was really very kind of creepy. And then I did Kiefer Sutherland on 24. And Kiefer, I was like, oh, I'm kind of curious to talk to him and see what he's like. Mm. And I got into his room, and he just said, so you go to this live cast, right? And I said, yeah. And he put Led Zeppelin on at full. It was to use the words of Spinal Tap, it was at 11. It was, the room was like vibrating. I thought the windows were going to come out. So he put Kashmir on at like 11. And you just can't converse with somebody or do anything, do you know what I mean? You just kind of, just like, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. So I finished it, and there's blood running out my nose and out my eardrums, and I'm like, that was great, Mr. Sutherland, thank you. But I don't think he wanted to talk to me. I think he was just kind of like, I don't want to talk to anybody, so that was weird. But actors who've got on my, Valentina Vargas was very rude to Doug Bradley on Bloodline. Mm-hmm. She was really, really rude. I loved her, and she was really, really flirtatious and very rude. When I say rude, I don't mean like rude, nasty. In England, you use the rude when the girl's a bit like, hey, you know what I mean? Like one time, I remember saying to Valentina, I was doing a makeup, and I was what? How old was I? I'm trying to make excuses for myself here. I was like 22. And I've got my arms around her, and I put a leather costume on. And like the first day she did it, she'd go say, would you go outside while I change? And by the end of the second day, she'd just throw her clothes on the floor and just stand there star naked, you know what I mean? And one day I'm kind of doing a makeup, and I've done it like 5 or 6 times, and I've got to know her pretty well. And I said, "Oh, Valentina," I said, "you're so lovely. I'd just love to kiss you." And she went, "Well, just do it then." And I was like, "Oh, all right." So, and it wasn't like a peck on the cheek, you know. I mean, she was a bit of a saucy girl. And then and guys would come to see her all day long. She'd have different guys coming into her trailer, and she was very kind of exotic. And she told me a great story about, she was in a film called In the Name of the Rose with Sean Connery. Mm-hmm. And she plays that kind of gypsy girl.
Yeah.
You know, the one that has that massive shagging session with Christian Slater.
Right. And
I said to her, "How was that?" And she said, "Oh, when Christian met me, he was a boy. When he left, he was a man." So get this, 3 years later, I'm working with Christian Slater, doing his head cast for Windtalkers. And I say to Christian, "Christian, so I met a girl who knows you." He goes, "Oh, really? Who's that?" And I go, "Valentina Vargas." He goes, "Oh, dude, when I met her, I was a boy. And when I left her, I was a man." I was like, "That's what she said." He's like, "Yeah, she was wild." I was like, "Dude, we've shared some of the same spirit." He's like, "Thanks, buddy. That's great to know." So, but Valentina, towards the end, she really kind of didn't like Doug Bradley very much. I don't know why, but she just took offense to Doug and to how much kind of praise he got in the pinhead makeup. And on the last day of shooting, we had kind of a little kind of barbecue situation, and she brought her band along. You know, she had like a little kind of Brazilian, you know, Chilean, whatever kind of, you know, South American kind of style band she sang in. And she's on the stage singing, you know, bippity, bippity, ba, 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 doing all this kind of stuff, and we're sitting there eating our food. And all of a sudden, I kind of nudge Doug, and I say, Doug, and he's like, what? And I go, listen to the lyrics. And she's going, you know, bippity, bippity, bob, I can't stand him, the motherfucker in the mask, the man who wears the mask, he's so arrogant, you know, and he's going, what the hell is that? And I go, I know. And she was singing her, like, anger about Doug. The one with the crown of pins, he can kiss my ass, you know. But no, generally, I've met actresses and actors who I thought were going to be a problem, and they've always been the opposite. I mean, I'm always very wary of doing makeups on really, really pretty girls where you make them very ugly, because it tends to have a really weird effect on them. You know, once they've been ugly for 2 or 3 days, they really don't want to wear makeups anymore like that, because they've lost all of their weapons, if you know what I mean. Right. You know, it's like you take a girl who's got really great big hair and make her bald, and within a couple of days they don't know what to do with themselves, and they can't they're getting no reaction from guys. Guys don't want to sit with them on set, and they think they're ugly, so they're steering away from them. But the exception to the rule there was Isabella Scorupco, who is lovely. You know, not only is she beautiful, but she's a really beautiful person. And when I did her makeup on Exorcist: The Beginning, not the Paul Schrader version, the Rennie Harley version, right. Just have to say that, because there are 2 out there, and one of them's okay, and one of them is crap. And I think Rennie's version is a slightly better one. But Isabella, who wore that makeup a lot, the kind of Reagan-esque demon possession makeup, and she was just great. She would just wear that thing all day long, and she'd be funny in it, and she never complained. And she was always, she'd kind of come in and she'd start to complain and then be like, why am I complaining? You guys have been here for hours, you know. And she always really enjoyed wearing the makeup, so she was just lovely. You know, right from the first day to the last day, complete professional. You know, I put different lenses, you know, we dyed her mouth black, and she was just always cool with it. And, you know, we had to paint her whole body. She got cuts and bruises all over, and she was always just really, really easy to work with. Very, very professional person, Isabella was, and easy to work with, and love to work with her again. So, but no, in general, there's been no one I've wanted to kill. To answer your question, no one I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure tomorrow Mike Regan and my crew will be like, "Oh, but you hated so and so," and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I did." A couple of producers I've wanted to lynch, but you know.
Sure. Did anything else, El Santo?
Well, you're on the subject. How was did you work with Tom Cruise in that Mission Impossible too?
I didn't.
Was he kind of wacky, or?
I didn't, but I did make all the masks for Tom. I did make all of his masks, which was very strange because we were all sworn to secrecy, and we had to. We were only given script pages in red, and I had to make something like 22 masks, and it was very, very strange doing that because we were, like I say, so much secrecy, and we had to destroy everything. We weren't allowed to keep teeth impressions. There was a very strict thing where Tom didn't want any of his anything that had his personality or his facial features being sold on eBay or going off anywhere. So it was very strange. We also on these non-disclosure agreements, and I was doing it at the time. I was doing Sleepy Hollow, so it was kind of weird. During the day we'd do our Sleepy Hollow thing, and then at night I'd be making pull-off masks of Duke Gray Scott and of I can never remember the guy's name, Serge, what's his name? I can never remember. The guy in Batman who says, "Nice coat, very nice coat." So his mask, and we had to make so many different masks for Tom Cruise, and what was great was just working with Tom's head to get to see what an enormous nose he has. No. It really is one of those faces that you look at and go, especially when someone's bald and you're seeing their face laid out for you, you really do get to see who's pretty and who's kind of not. And what's weird about Tom Cruise, obviously he's a good-looking guy and women love him, but if you look at his face, if you were sculpting it, you wouldn't think it would be a classically great-looking face. Mm-hmm. You know, you kind of, when you're working with like a chiseled, square-jawed, like Casper Van Dien, you go, well, there's a classically good-looking guy. But Tom really doesn't have those features. It's kind of weird. And, but his whole personality together, he's a good-looking guy, obviously, for the girls. Although, before we used to make jokes about him having a big nose and crooked teeth, but he's fixed his teeth now, so I guess he's got it figured out. Yeah. Whereas, like, I worked with Demi Moore. I did a live cast on Demi Moore, and she was just absolutely gorgeous. You can always tell how a pretty a woman is when if they look good bald, if they look good with no hair, they're really hot. Because I remember doing a live cast. This is going to sound terrible, and Hugh Hefner's going to have me shot. But I did a live cast on Brandy Roderick, who was like Hugh Hefner's girlfriend for a long time before the three bobblehead
girls next door.
Before the three bobblehead girlfriends who came along. And I did a live cast with Kendra, and when people see Brandy Roderick's head, they thought it was Eric Stoltz. They go, "Is that Eric Stoltz?" And I go, "That's Brandy Roderick, Playboy Playmate of the Year." And I put a wig on it, and they go, "Wow, she looks really good with hair." And I go, "Hair off," and they go, "Ooh." Which is weird, because Brandy's really good looking and beautiful and got huge tracts of land and, a lovely girl, but when you took the hair away, it had a huge effect on her face. But Demi Moore, no hair, that woman is just stunning looking. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And a really nice person. I have to say, when I did a live cast on Demi Moore, she was the most unbelievable live cast I've ever done. She came on her own to my studio, and this is like a couple of years ago. Came on her own, no entourage, no hullabaloo. Came in and sat in a chair and was like a statue for an hour while I did a live cast. And by the end of it, we were doing lines from A Few Good Men. I'd be doing her lines, and she'd do Jack Nicholson's lines. And she just goofed off. She took photos with all my crew, signed pictures. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, I wish I could say nasty things about big Hollywood stars, but she was just amazing. And then the weird thing is, about a month later, I was going for a meeting for White Noise 2. And I got into an elevator at a place called Gold Circle Films, people who did My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And I get in the elevator, and this guy comes running in, and it was Ashton Kutcher. And I was like, "Oh, hi." I said, "How are you?" And he said, "Oh, fine, thank you." I said, "I just worked with your wife the other day." "I've seen her balls." And he's like, "What?" He said, "Oh, you didn't do the live cast for her the other day?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, cool." I said, "Yeah, she's a very nice lady." And he said, "Yes, she is." And that's where I left it. I didn't think it was a good idea to go any further with the conversation at that point. So.
Have you ever had to have a live cast yourself?
Oh, I've done tons of them.
Yeah.
I'm a lunatic when it comes to live cast. If you, there are a couple of films you can see my head in. I'm trying to think of most notably. I've done it several times, and I've been like a generic head. Unfortunately, it goes sometimes not so good for me because I'm kind of an idiot when I do it. What I do is, we always hate having to re-sculpt the nose area. Obviously, in order to let actors breathe, you have to keep their nose clear. Mm-hmm. So when I do it, I just breathe through my mouth and I shove alginate up my nose. I'm just like, I just push the alginate on myself. And I always love to do really kind of wild expressions. And one time I did it, I had my mouth really, really wide open. It was actually for a Killing Exorcist at the beginning that got cut. And I had my mouth so wide open that when we tried to get the live cast off, it actually locked up around my mouth and around my eyes, and actually gave me 2 black eyes. And then when they took it off, they realized I'd shoved a handful of alginate up my nose, and I think they thought I'd actually I'd actually live cast half of my own brain stem because the alginate was like 4 inches up my nose. So yeah, I do. I love having alginate live cast. I find it a very kind of strange experience to go through. If you ever have a chance to have it done, I really suggest you do it because it's a weird thing to have done. Mm-hmm. And I kind of enjoy it. And Johnny Depp really enjoys it. When we did Sleepy Hollow, he kept trying to say, I need a live cast. And we're like, we're not doing anything on you, Johnny. And you're like, I just want one anyway. And the funny story about live casting I can tell you from Sleepy Hollow is, when we did Casper Van Dien, we're doing Casper, and Casper's a great guy to work with. Very funny guy, lovely guy. But we were live casting him, and usually when we do live cast, we're very careful with people. We're very safe around, and we don't goof off because, you are kind of trusting in the people around you. So we're very safe and very aware that we're doing something kind of dicey. But with Casper, we've done it a couple of times with him, so we knew we could be a bit silly. And we had these great big long, floppy, cylindrical lengths of silicone that are kind of, well, look, I'll tell you, they're like a giant cock. they're the pore spouts on the silicone. They get filled up with very soft silicone, and they flop around. So it's basically like the length of the inside of a toilet, like a roll of downy paper tissue, like a tube that's about 12 inches long and about 3 inches in diameter. And they're made of very, very soft, floppy silicone. So as Casper's in his live cast and we're waiting for the final pieces of it to go off, I take one of these long lengths of silicone and I dip it into some slime, and I yell into the thing, "Hey, Casper, hang on to this for a second," and I flop it into his hands. And he's like, "Whoa, whoa!" I can hear him inside the thing freaking out, and and he's laughing. And we get the live cast off him, and he's laughing and giggling, going, "Whoa, what was that thing?" And I pull this silicone thing out, and he's like, "Whoa, look at that! That's insane!" And he's laughing and crazy. All well and good, until 6 months later, when I'm at the premiere for Sleepy Hollow, and there we are at Man's Chinese Theatre, and everyone's in the theatre. I mean, everybody, and I'm sitting in the theatre, and it just so happens I'm sitting in front of Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman and various other Hollywood celebrities, and I hear somebody coming down the aisle, and I'm in the middle of the bank of seats. I'm not on the end of the row. I'm right in the middle, and I hear someone go, "Gary, Gary," and I turn around and it's Casper, and Casper goes, "Hey, Gary, I was just on the red carpet, and I told him about when you did the live cast and you put that big rubber cock in my hand." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude." And Danny DeVito is just looking at me like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do I admit to this?" I just go, "Who's that?" So came back to bite me in the ass a few months later. But usually when we're doing live casts, we're very kind of very sedate. And I got a name a while back for doing live casts and being very careful with them, so much so that I would get calls to do tricky live casts, like John Ritter, bless his heart. Before he passed away, and he did a live cast doing, and he was terrified of having it done. I think a lot of people have live casts done in the 70s when it was done with plaster of Paris, and they got brutalized. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we really try to raise the bar where we can do a live cast in about 12 minutes. You're in and out in 12 minutes. We do it very, very quickly and make it very painless. So John had asked if we could go to his house. He was very worried about doing it. It was for Child's Play, Bride of Chucky, I think, when he gets hit in the face with a nail gun. So we went to his house, and he played Beatles music, and his lovely wife, Amy Yesbach, was there looking after him, and he was great. And at the end of it, he's like, "Thank you so much. I was really freaked out about having this done. I did it in the 70s and had one of my eyebrows had to be cut off and all this kind of stuff." So he said, "Thank you." So it is a weird thing to do. I mean, you really have to kind of build a bond with people. And, when we did Richard Griffiths, the heavy-set guy in Sleepy Hollow, he was petrified of having it done. And touch wood, we've always managed to get through the live cast. There's only one I've ever had to do where, 2 instances where things went weird. One was a girl couldn't do it, just could not do it, and we had to do one eye at a time, and then we did her mouth separately. We kind of glued it all together. Right. And then one of the female twins in Hellraiser Inferno, she said, "I can do the live cast as long as I can see through one eye." So we did the whole cast, and she got one eye open. So it was the weirdest looking thing. It was like, a big lump of plaster on her head with one eye hole, with his one eye peeking out, like one beady eye watching. Very strange. I don't know what she thought we were going to do, but she wanted to keep her honest. So, when I do live casts, we're always very careful, and we don't goof off, and we don't play around, and we don't joke. Because, like I say, I'm always very aware that once you're inside that thing and you're trapped inside, it can be a bit freaky. So.
Yeah. I read that you played one of the monsters in Feast. You played, the mother monster.
I actually played the mother and the father. Both me and Mike Regan, who played the creatures, we basically took turns playing the mother, the Papa Beast.
Yeah.
But yes, I played the female one as well. I also played the big hairy creatures at the beginning. I'm the one who gets raped over the head, over the hood of the car.
Right.
What fun that was.
What was John Gulager like? Because we had him on the show, and he was really kind of crazy.
John, yeah. John will test your patience as an effects guy, I tell you that. I love John Gulager, a lovely guy and a lovely family. I mean, Diane's great, Clue, I mean, just a cantankerous old git, but hilarious and really, really fun. But John will test it to you as a filmmaker because he has a very different way of doing it, I mean, the normal way of filming is to block a scene, and then you pick your angles, and then you shoot your master, and then you start to shoot your coverage. And John doesn't. John's the kind of guy who'll eventually block a scene, and then will shoot inserts, and likes to shoot a bug crawling across the desk, and then he'll do the other stuff. And he's really very in his own head. So I don't know. The thing about John was I never thought he was really the kind of guy who should be directing horror films. I really didn't think he was that guy. I mean, if I was going to do a horror film, and I was a producer and I had millions of dollars, would I hire John Gulager? I have to say I wouldn't. But if I was going to make a low-budget kind of Buffalo 66, weird drug people movie, right. I would definitely hire John Gulager because he's got a very strange eye for stuff, but I just don't know if it's commercial, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I say, I think he's got a very unique sensibility. I mean, and because he's so Fellini-inspired. And again, I mean, I don't mean to kind of quash Fellini fans out there who love it, but I'm a very kind of... I'm drawn to what is contemporary and what is popular cinema, I like glossy, well-made films, and whilst Fellini's obviously a genius, I mean, it's not like he made big blockbusters, that kind of sold millions and did stuff. They were kind of cult, and they were... they were cinephile movies. And I think John's more inspired by that kind of stuff. When I meet a horror director, I expect them to say, I was inspired by Sam Raimi and George Romero and Dario Argento and Tobe Hooper and all that kind of stuff, and John's not. He's into Fellini and that kind of vibe. So yeah, tricky to work with. I mean, Project Greenlight, the first piece was just tricky, full stop. I mean, I think John was being badgered by everybody, and obviously we were being filmed 24 hours a day, which didn't help. And then obviously Feast 2 and 3, which I had very little to do with. I was working on something else at the time. I really felt like they handed the reins to John, and I don't know what everyone else thinks of the films, but I wasn't a great fan of them. I thought they were a bit hit and miss. Yeah. And I really think it was a bit kind of like the lunatics got to take over the asylum.
Yeah, this part two. When you were talking earlier about the big plastic penis, I mean, there's quite a bit of that in Feast 2. Yeah,
I mean, I don't get that. You know what I mean? We did our little penis bit in the first film, which I thought was very funny, but creatures running around with giant dongs, I mean, it's just kind of weird to me. I mean, again, I do kind of have a weird thing when I'm working on creatures. I tend to think about their natural history and what happens with their penises and stuff like that, And obviously it's weird that creatures don't have dicks, but I'm always kind of based on animals, and that most animals don't have their genitalia just hanging down 6 inches, down. It would get caught in things, or they tread on it, like I do. No, but I mean, most creatures, appendages tend to retract or go away for a little while. I mean, I know my dog's penis retracts because when I come home, he pees all over me usually. But I mean, that's what I thought with our creature was that its junk would go back in when it wasn't being used, but John just likes the junk out all the time. And also the weirdest looking junk. He loves big ball sacks but small penises. Which I could never figure out, unless they were kind of modelling after his own genitalia. I don't know, Right. But the ones that Optic Nerve created were just the biggest sacks I've ever seen. and this tiny nub of a penis. It was all beans and no Frank. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I mean, I was responsible for shooting some second unit on that, and I did do the sequence where the penis goes into the you know the rape sequence in the container. So I shot some of that, which was I got into big trouble shooting that sequence because we were shooting in this little town called Plain Dealing. And I was shooting the sex scene, and I've got Mike Regan who was wearing the creature suit. Again, I didn't make the creature suits on that one, so if you don't like the look of them in that film, don't blame me. Because I did the first ones, and I was very happy with that, but I thought they were a bit shoddy in the second and third film. But I was shooting some second unit, and Mike Regan was wearing the suit, who works for me all the time, and I was directing him, and we were directing in this little street in the middle of this very kind of, you know, quiet, you know, town in Louisiana, and I'm screaming at Mike Regan, okay, shag the pipe, okay, fuck it, ram it, stick it in there, do it, knob it, do it, and blow your load, shoot it out. And then the next day we found out that the Women's Guild building was right next to where we were shooting, and apparently they'd been appalled and offended by this English man who was screaming these obscenities. And then I found out that they'd been appalled and offended for almost 2.5 hours, where they'd pulled up chairs and sat and listened. It was like they weren't appalled and offended and walked away. They were so appalled and offended that they like sat there for the whole duration of the whole scene. So then I got very kind of annoyed at the people of Plain Dealing, and like, you know, I'd go and help occasionally dress the blood on the floor, and they'd stand on the corner, these group of women kind of staring, looking very kind of dowdy and arms folded and obviously talking to themselves, and I would just stare at them as I threw gallons of blood on the floor, you know, looking at them kind of menacingly, and then I would kind of like throw limbs, and I'd make sure, I'd go, where's that fake penis? And I'd go and throw it on the floor in front of them, and they'd be like, oh my word, you know. And it's like, ladies, the film that was coming to your town was called Feast 2, Sloppy Seconds. What did you expect? Maybe they didn't understand what sloppy seconds meant. We thought it was a movie about food. We thought a happy ending really meant a happy ending. So, yeah, Plain Dealing, what a nightmare of a town that was. But, I mean, the funny thing about that was shooting second unit was they'd allow us to do things that I've never been able to do anywhere. Like, we took a scene with a character called Shit Kicker and had him driving a Jeep up and down the street, firing a gun into the air, and we just didn't ask for permission, we just did it. So he's actually firing a gun off into the air, and, you know, the people didn't seem to, like, see that as being unusual at all. Very strange. Very odd place. Yeah, we did a whole bunch of films in Louisiana. It was kind of an eye-opener, I have to say, going to Shreveport and to Plain Dealing.
Well, we want to thank you for coming on tonight, and I know we went a couple minutes late, as in like an hour late.
I did warn you, didn't I?
We were just hoping you wouldn't be mad at us.
Oh, I'm not mad. Guys, I'll rant on all night. I mean, I have verbal diarrhea, as you probably figured out. I could bore for England, I really could. I have a gold medal in boring people to death.
No.
It was anytime. Be a pleasure to come on anytime you want me to come on and yak. I will for you.
All right. Everybody tune in next week when we have Gary back on.
Actually, tune in next week when I host the show, and you can be my guest. Be safe, guys, okay?
Yep, you too, man. That was awesome.
Hi, this is Lisa Wilcox from Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com.